Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hello, hello, hello. We're Rockin the Love. I'm Robyn.
And I'm Gil. And we are here with you the first Wednesday of October, 2024. Wow. Moving right along. Welcome, everyone. We're going to talk a little bit about story today. And we'll share more about that later. But we've been rocking the love in a lot of different ways this week. Right?
Always. What are you thinking of?
Oh, I'm just thinking of all the stuff in the house, the stuff we're cleaning up, putting away, figuring out why we have it in the first place, all of that.
So for those of you who are just joining us, the basic philosophy of Rockin the Love is that that's all we can do. Wherever you are, it's really our jobs to rock the love, to be the love, to emanate the love, to anchor the love. Whatever it is, it all comes down to love.
Absolutely.
And so, this week we have a little surge of cleaning the house because we have guests coming. And so
those pesky guests require you to clean up.
So we have boxes because we've recently moved and we have a lot of stuff to go through. And, we have a teenager that moved in with us. So we moved the boxes out of his room. That was really our storage room for a minute. And so we're going through boxes, and boxes are funny.
They're somewhere between terrifying and fun.
Yeah. and like you find things and you're like, what do I do with this? What, and especially after you've had it so long. Right. I mean, now it's ridiculous because there's things in there that you've had for like 30, 40 years.
Right.
And you're like, oh my God, well, do I get rid of it now?
What do I do with this MCI card?
Right. Well, we found your high school graduation cap.
Yep.
With the tassel, everything very neatly and organized. And we, I don't know, we found some fun things.
Yeah, and we found stuff that we're like, oh, this is cool. I forgot we ever had this.
But then I was saying, like in this day and age of like everybody like lightening our load and getting rid of things we don't need. And, like I hate it when someone gives me a gift that's like a tchotchke, even if I love the tchotchke, I'm like, oh God, not a tchotchke, not a little thing to put on a shelf to dust. And so I found this thing that I gave to Gil when we were dating, like it was all romantic and everything. And for some anniversary or birthday or whatever, I did that thing where you buy a star. So I bought him a star. There's a star out there in the galaxy named after Gil. And so I'm looking at the paper though, and I'm thinking, and it's one of those things that 20 years ago we should have framed, and we would have been like, oh yeah, look, there's a star. But like I look at it and I go, okay, if you were changing your life and moving to Costa Rica, would you take this item?
Well, if we use that measuring stick on most of our stuff, it would be a lot easier to just get a dumpster.
It's sad. I mean, because it's like nobody wants our stuff. Everybody has stuff of their own. I mean, even kids or whatever. It's like you can only take or give much to family that goes, oh yeah, this is sweet to remember this by.
Yeah.
So it's a journey. I mean, and it's like a cellular journey,
Mm-hmm.
like going through the boxes and finding the stuff and pictures of old friends and people that are gone, and yeah, just remembering. And like we have posters of Michael Beckwith and when it was Ricky Byers Beckwith, um, doing a show, like a big poster for the event. It's like, do you frame it or do you toss it?
We found my one of my college catalogs from 1983 at UC Santa Barbara. I did freak out my godson though, because I opened it to a picture of bicycles, which just looks like bicycles for miles. He's like, "What is that?" I said, "Everybody rode their bikes."
It's a very foreign concept. So anyway, yeah, so that's been our journey. There was something I just thought of that I was going to tell you about, but I forget. That's the way the brain goes.
So if you're out there, let us know you're there, because we want to talk with you. We want to answer questions. We want to chat about what's important to you, in addition to whatever ideas we're coming to the table with today. Be sure and like us and tell your friends and come back next week and all those good things. And we really appreciate you being here.
All right. Now it's time for the good news, I think.
What do you think? Yeah, I think.
Time for the good news. This is our segment where we talk about what's good in the world because we
do.
So we need it.
Many of us, is that yours?
No.
Okay. Many of us are familiar with the woolly mammoth, and anyone who lived in California and went to Mammoth Mountain and all that, we've seen depictions of the woolly mammoth and all that stuff. Well, I just found this thing where 4 or 5 years ago, a totally intact woolly rhinoceros was found in Siberia. And they've since done a bunch of study on it, and it still had skin and organs and everything intact. And so they found out all this information about the woolly rhinoceros. I just thought it was fascinating that, how in the world can you find something 32,000 years old frozen in the ground? I can't keep bread good in this freezer.
Yeah, it is a puzzlement. All right. And Gil is going to try to sneak away now because we have someone at our door. So
yes.
Just go.
Okay.
And I will tell you the good news. My good news is that, you all know how I love either animal stories or people stories. I love the people. I love people doing good things in the world. So this story is about two teenagers, and they are at an academy they're studying like math and things like that, hypotheses and trigonometry and all of those things. And so the school is in New Orleans, and Kalika Johnson and Ikea Jackson, who I believe were like 17-ish, they were trying to figure out the hypothesis of the Greek. They solved the Pythagorean theorem using trigonometry, and this is only classical Greek brainiac Pythagoras created a theorem, and I'm not going to try to tell you how it goes because it won't make any sense to me or you, or maybe you, but not me. So anyway, all the mathematicians have only been able to solve it using the equation to prove it, and they solved it. And when they did solve it, with it doing it with evidence of it, Charles Barkley, basketball legend, NBA player, said, he would donate $1 million to the academy that produced these two groundbreaking mathematicians, because he really wanted to support the success of other high school teens, and that he just was he's really empowered and impassioned about young girls and boys that are doing work like this. So for the next 10 years, he's donating $100,000 every year to this school. And it's just a massive gift that will total $100 million. And, oh no, that won't total the $100 million. That's a different story. He turned down contracts of $100 million to do things like stay on TNT Sports Channel. When that channel got bought, he turned down contracts because he wanted to stay there to help all of the employees and keep their jobs, because he knew if he left, other people would lose their jobs. And he was like, we're all a family, and he wasn't going to do that. So I just love stories about people like Charles Barkley, or famous people in the news that are using their power and their money for good. And that's my story. I think it's such an example of what we can do and what we can be and who we are in the world. And I think that when, someone shows up and can really walk their talk like that, I just think it's super inspiring. So that is the good news. When we come back, and I do say we because I'm hoping that it will be we, when we come back, we are going to talk about your story. What is your story, and how is it serving you, and how has it served you? The good, the bad, the ugly, because there's all parts to that, right? We all carry a story with us, or two or three, that we could probably shift or change, but we're going to talk about it and find out more about that. So we will see you right back here on New Thought Media in just a minute.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
Hello, hello, hello. It's only me again. But he's coming. That's what he says. He's on his way. You coming in? You subbing for him?
Yes, subbing in for Reverend Gil Olmsted is Reverend Michael Mangus until he comes back.
Thank you. Thank you
I
so much.
I just didn't want you to be alone.
I know. I know. It's, but you know, we're never alone. So the story, the thing today is we're talking about our story, and why Gil and I had talked about having a story, our own story, and then one about each other. And so I'll just ask you, Michael, how many stories do you think you have?
Oh, probably about 10 or 20 or more.
Right?
For every area of my life, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're not all bad. Their stories can be good, stories can be bad, right? I mean, it just depends how you use them, how you use your powers.
Right. I think the one story it's been interesting has been the one of victim. You know how people have done things to me and blah blah blah, and how organizations and individuals have done things to me, blah blah blah. It's like, what would I have been without those individuals?
Well, it's
They really, I think for me, they really helped to grow me, and that without them, I wouldn't be the person I am.
yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I think that's true probably of most stories, right? I mean, obviously they're there for a reason and they're there to support us in something, some way, somehow, until we can switch to another story, right?
I
But
think. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, I think the stories that, since we're on Rockin the Love about relationships, I think the story that we have about relationships, I think is a very interesting story. If we believe that, um, that we can't trust other people because of our history, if we believe that individuals are hard to attract, if there's history with myself or other people and I get triggered, the tendency is to go ahead and to blame them and not say, okay, well, there's three fingers coming back here. So
Right. Right. So there's the opportunity to learn from our stories. I think welcome back.
Thank you. Sorry about the interruption.
well, I will go now. I just wanted to, I didn't want Robyn to be alone, all
Oh,
alone on the screen.
well, thank you. Thank you. We always try to
Okay.
make sure somebody's with her all the time.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, so our story. So basically, what we were talking about is, I mean, we all have plenty of them,
Yes.
and some of them have served us, some of them have held us back. Well, and Michael was saying probably one of his biggest is the victim story. What different people have done to him, and
Right.
blah blah blah.
It's
Well,
a popular one.
it's a popular one. Yeah. Well, I think that's all. It's also an appropriate one for ages and phases and stages, because there is a stage at which it is all about us and everything is being done to us.
Right. Well, yes. And we don't even realize that it works. It can work, or it does work a different way. We interpret everything that way. That's just how it is.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what's your story?
My story is I can do anything. But if you ask my daughter, I can't snowboard very well. And sometimes simple things elude me. And I know you want to talk about my car. But it's just, I think sometimes that's one of the stories, but probably one of the real stories is that, and I guess it probably goes with it, and that is that I'm not enough,
Mm-hmm.
and so I must be able to accomplish whatever. I must be able to fix whatever. I must be able to make it work. And in my defense, I'm gifted in that area and I do pretty well with many things, but I don't give up easily.
Well, and are they the same? I mean, is that the same? One thing is being able to do a lot of things. And the other thing is when you say, I can do anything, like when you say that's your story, I can do anything. I'm not even, well.
It's from the perspective of like, if it's there and it's something that needs to be done, I should be able to do it. And maybe
Right.
that's more the story. I should be able to do it.
Right. And I mean, but I think that's an interesting one to have juxtaposed with you're not worthy, because that immediately takes you out of being able to do many things.
Well, I think it's a part of proving that story isn't true on a subconscious level. You know, it's a way I can, I can step out of that story and go, oh, that's not true. Look, I can do this and I can do that. And I did the other thing,
Well, because I think one of my stories is I can do anything,
Mm-hmm.
but I do it differently than you.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I do it. Mine is way different. Mine is more of a, like, I can do anything, and I do. I don't get stopped by my other stories. I mean, because one of my stories is, that people don't like me.
Yeah.
But that doesn't stop me.
No. Well, no.
No, it's not.
No.
I mean, they don't get meshed together, which they could. I can do anything. Oh, if only they liked me.
And if your husband dumps you out of a wheelchair in Disneyland, you don't want anyone to help you, because you can do anything. Right. There's no reason for anyone to help you. So, I mean, I think that's the downside of that story, if you will.
Yeah. And I'm not really talking about those things as much as I'm talking, though, about, like, if you tell me, it's like if you tell me I can't go on vacation because I don't have money.
Right.
Oh, I can, and I will have money then. I will make that happen. That's different. I mean, some of it's just defiant.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm proud of that. I don't have a problem with that.
How does that affect your relationships?
Unless you want me to ask you those questions, I would hesitate on that, little man. Well, yeah. I mean, but I get it. So we have stories that serve. I mean, they all serve us in some way, but we have stories that are good stories that motivate us, that get us to a different level, and we have other stories that hold us back from our potential or from what's possible.
Yeah, and maybe it's a slight difference. Like, I'm thinking when you say that, I can do anything is a very positive story in general. I should do everything is a different story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think we shift it slightly, and then it sounds the same, but it becomes a negative. It sounds very similar. Or even we're shifting the words in our head. We're not even shifting them in reality, but that's more what we're thinking.
Well, and I would even say when one gets stuck in the nuances of that story, because like you just said, I can do anything, or I should do everything. I get stuck in, like, doing things because I'm like, I could do it. I could do it. Other people are like, I don't know how to do that. And I'm like, oh, come on. All you need to do is look it up on the internet. It's not a big deal. I mean, in my head's going, la, 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 la. And I go, I'll do it because I figure somebody's got to do it, which clearly isn't always the case. I mean, the times when I have held back and not, step forward when it really wasn't mine to do. It's interesting to watch the other people's process.
Uh-huh. Do they step in, or does it obviously depends on the situation in the group or whatever?
Well, and that's part of the reason that sometimes I step up, because the ramifications of having to listen to other people not know how to do it, and or whine about doing it, or how do I find out this, it's like I end up doing the same amount of work, and I get it, teach a man to fish or something, but clearly they're not fishermen because it's like, we have the internet, teach yourself to fish. I say that partially kidding, but you know what I'm saying. It's like sometimes it's like having kids. Sometimes you have to teach them because that's your job. You're teaching them, and that's so much more work than just doing it yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we see that with kids all the way through. I think we're always helping them learn the way. In many ways, that's what we do with each other in a relationship, is help each other learn the way. And we have to be very careful with how we do that. And if it becomes our story that we're supposed to teach everybody everything, that can really get in the way, I think.
Well, speaking of getting in the way,
I do that often. I get in the way.
No, let's talk about that, because I think, especially in relationships, since we're talking more relationship wise, I think, when does your story get in the way of the relationship?
Oh.
Oh.
Can I do an easier question? When does it not get in the way?
Well, okay, there's that. No, but I mean, like, when does your story get in the way? For example, as Gil alluded to, that I wanted to talk about the car. We're going to talk about the car. Gil is, he's very talented at many things. He really is. And I'm very lucky. And it's very sexy to have, ladies and gentlemen, it's just sexy when a man can do, or a person can do, they can build, they can cook, they can clean, they can, he puts on tools. I say, I don't know what's going on here. He's like, hold on, and goes out and he gets a tool and fixes whatever it is. That's very exciting for me. So it's really a blessing, and I love it. So because of that, he does a lot of things on his own. And I will say, as the years have gone by, and perhaps this is because we were living apart for a year and a half, maybe it just was different before, but like, we have this car that he needed a new starter. And so Gil's like, I'm gonna put a starter in. I'm like, okay. So he gets the starter and he puts the car up on the jacks and, goes to do it, and didn't have the right whatever, nut, bolt, whatever. So the car sits there. And it sits there. And it sits there. And I'm like, well,
that's because it didn't have a starter.
I got it. But and so he's like, and then he'll go back. He went back under the car for hours and like came out all dirty and tired and angry because he couldn't align this bolt with that bolt, and it was so close, and it was, and he's like, this is the time I need to do this and I need to do that, and I'm thinking, you need to call a mechanic. But I'm like, quiet. I'm like, okay, you gotta know when to go in. It's like jump rope. And I was like, finally, I said, maybe we should call a mechanic. So rah, 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 rah. Anyway, and so we did. So, but the point of that is, at what point does it begin to affect your relationship? I mean, it didn't bother me because I know you and everything, but like, there's a point for me in the relationship where not only, I mean, it's bothering me for you because you're getting so aggravated and so frustrated that it's not a passion job anymore. You're not like, oh, fun, I'm fixing my car, which I know you enjoy doing. And it's not easy and it's not effortless. And you're starting to think about, we need the extra car because our car is doing funny things, and you're getting worked up. And so it leads me to a place of like, when do I go, cut the crap, call a mechanic, you know, to save you. You know what I mean, though? And
myself.
but really, but I think in relationships we do this, because, or I do this for sure, because I don't know, because we've learned that we should give our partners space, and that they need, this, that, and the other thing. So instead of back in the day where probably husbands, wives, whatever, people would have nagged and gone, no, you need to da 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 da. And maybe people still do that. I don't know. But in this new thought world we live in, it's like, the perfect time will arise to that he'll have a revelation. And, so how do we do that in relationships without having the other person feel any, whatever feelings, hurt, mad, like, like you're not enough? Because that's the bottom line, is you walk away from it. You go, I'm so sorry. I don't care. I'm not thinking about it at all. You're like, I'm so sorry, I couldn't do it. And I'm thinking, that's because you're not a mechanic. Just like I wouldn't want my mechanic to give a spiritual talk necessarily. We all have our geniuses, and you're good at it, and you fixed many of cars, but you know what I mean? So how in a relationship do we know when and how and where?
Well, I think you're right. At some level, we have to give people space, and I think personally, we have to learn for ourselves, and let go of our own story, because probably the aggravation affected our relationship more than it was worth, if you will. But I'm looking at saving a few pennies and figuring this out, and all that kind of stuff, and there still has to be a place where we can really let go of whatever thought we had. What was the thought? What was I trying to do? What was I, okay, it's all right. I don't have to do that.
Well, but it's not even that you don't have to do that. You've done that. It's done. You've done that. You were doing that to show me that you were doing that you could do it, whatever. But it was, the bottom line, you were doing it so that I felt loved and taken care of and protected, and that you saved a few pennies.
Shekels.
But I mean, but that's the reason you were doing that, and that's done when you just exhibit the first behaviors, So it's like, how do we because I think that's a really good point. It's like, when something doesn't work that we intended to be one way, that doesn't mean we didn't have the intention. And so how can we acknowledge, like, the intention is great and the intention is good. Hey Shay, we see you out there. Thanks for joining us. Because truth be told, we have another car that he's talking about fixing as well.
But I know what I need to do on this one, and it requires a large chunk of money. So I'm waiting to do that one.
But like, I think you need to live into the law of circulation, because you are cutting off somebody's income. You are cutting off someone's passion. There's a mechanic out there that really is living to fix your car.
Yeah.
And you could take that block of time to do something else.
And that's totally my intention once I have the thing to go down and pay them with. But I will say to you that I don't necessarily panic or decide that it absolutely has to be done this minute, no matter what. Whereas you might, because I was going to say, because you don't know as much about what's happening. And the reality is, you don't think you know as much as I think I know. So
I think I followed you, but Michael, I think we need a disclaimer here, because if he thinks that I don't know, I don't panic. What did you say? I don't.
well, because you don't know you don't know, you are not, you're thinking it's something or could be something really serious that I'm not thinking it is, because I think I know that it's not, and you think you know that it could be.
No, honey, honey, I'm not thinking that. I'm not thinking that at all. I'm thinking, take it to a mechanic. If I want a liver transplant, I go to a doctor. I don't, you. I love you, and you have you're great at, like I said, at numerous things. And sometimes it's like, just can't you just turn it over? Like, why? Yeah.
So, folks, if you'd like to come back next week, we'll be in our next session of therapy. Our off-the-air therapist sends us notes every so often to help us out with the process. Okay, just kidding. But those are all things. I mean, I think.
But those are things you're thinking. I just want to be clear, because I'm thinking about, it could be something he doesn't know. I mean, yeah, every now and then, of course, it crosses my mind. Clearly, it was something you didn't know.
Oh, and this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that there was a little tiny blip on had the wrong part, even though it looked exactly the same. And that's how it is. And in part because I don't have the experience to look at it and go, oh, wow, look, it's a little tiny spot right here. That's going to mess you up.
Right. So, at the end of the day, it is generally something you don't know. Otherwise, you would fix it and it would be done.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, everything like that is a learning curve.
Yeah.
And I understand that. And part of it is, where should I be spending my learning curve time? Should I be doing it on things that are not my genius, or should I be doing it on other things?
Okay. So Shay is asking, she's confused. Why do I care what you do?
Thank you, Shay. I'm confused too sometimes.
So what we're talking about today is, we're talking about people's stories and getting stuck in your story and how it affects relationships. I know Shay came in late. So that just happened to be an example of what was going on here. It's not, why do I care what he does? Well, because I have to live with him. And so.
No, you say, because I love to spend time with him, and when he's under the car, I can't get there.
There's that. and I have to live with him. And when his story comes into play in the middle of doing these things, any of our stories, like, we're not enough, or we can't do it, or why didn't, we tried and we never can do what we wanted to do, or whatever the story is, we're talking about how it affects the relationship. So that's what we're talking about.
And I think specifically we're talking about my story of in part, at least, being that I should be able to do everything, which gets in the way sometimes, because I won't just acquiesce to doing something different and allow myself to apply my energies in some other fashion, which would be more helpful to the relationship, or, could be spending time together, could be just doing my work, could be anything, but coming out happier because I'm doing what I have some idea about. And part of it came from my story, I think, that I am not enough. So part of that is that the other story is me proving, and all this is in the head at some level. This is analyzing it all, but at some level there is a story that, I can't do it right, and I don't get it. I don't do enough, or I don't get it done, or whatever it is. And that kind of drives the story of, if something shows up that needs to be done, I should do it.
And then for both of us, since we both have different tendencies, but in the same realm, then it affects our relationship. So it then in turn affects how we interact with each other, even if it wasn't the car story, but if Gil has had a day where he's not feeling he didn't get something done at work, or he doesn't know how to do something, then he comes home, and how does that affect us? Because he can't let go. And I'm saying he, but the same for me, or if I've had whatever my story is, and I'm stuck in it, then how do we move past that to be able to work efficiently, work in our partnership efficiently, or any of that? So those are the questions on the table.
So basically the question is what stories do we tell ourselves that and how do they influence the rest of our life? I mean, sure, whatever story I tell myself, it has an effect on me, but does it affect those around me because of my implementation or my interpretation of that story? And is that story true ultimately? Is it true that I should, or is it true that I can't, or is it true that I can't afford it, or is it true that whatever that story is?
Well, and I will say, I mean, when we marry couples, we talk a lot about coming to the relationship and what you bring to the relationship, and that we each bring our own set of luggage, that's filled with all the stories we've carried around with us, right? What our parents have told us, how we do certain things, why we do certain things, all of that. And so when we get to a certain stage, I mean, us having been together for over 20 years, we're kind of in a different stage, because it's not really contingent on the old stories anymore as much.
Or you'd think we got over them or something, maybe.
Maybe.
No, but hopefully we've learned to understand and to grow through those stories into a way to relate that's more beneficial for both of us. I mean, that would be what I would hope. That would be what I would think would happen when people spend time in a similar relationship, whether it's in a long-term job or in a long-term personal relationship or whatever it is. You learn how things function there. Now, sometimes that creates a place for us to create another story that we get to tell. We tell the story about how, the problem in our relationship is really Robyn. It's not me. And if I tell myself that story, then basically I cut off much of the possibility of what our relationship could be, because I've decided that whatever the issue is, it's not my fault. I don't have anything to do with it. Right?
Yeah. So how do we use our stories for good? Like, how do we transform that? Because I think there's also stories that we're not aware of. And I go back to in the beginning of our relationship or our marriage or whatever, even those things that are as simple as, as simple as loading the dishwasher. Gil's way was very specific, and at times, and different stories, I can't think right now, but different stories where you would go, that's the way you do it. And I was like, it's not the way I do it. It's the way, maybe the way you do it, or the way you've done it, or the way your mother and father did it, which was all valid. But I was like, I remember being like so surprised. I was like, no, that's the way you do it. And I thought, what are you talking about? I've been doing it like this for, all my life. And I think so I say that to say that I think there's times where there's another story.
Right.
We've bought into the belief of it's this way.
Yeah. Well, I think that probably is our biggest story of everything in our life. Our spiritual growth, our relationships, whatever it is. If we get to that place where we know these facts, and that's the way it is, and we don't leave room for anything else to show up, you know. And if our story is, I know, that creates a big issue.
Right. And again, one of the things Gil and I did some work on in workshops was when when a person says, I know. And when, you know, when you're talking to somebody and you're like, I know. And it's something like when you say, I know, you cut off 75%, 85% of your ability to hear
anything else.
Because you've already
in your mind said, I know, and that I know is whatever the picture is you're holding. Whatever that is, you've decided that. So as they describe whatever they're describing, you're no longer listening because you already know. I think that, to me, that's what that symbolizes or talks about.
Right. All right, let's see what Shay has to say. The behaviors and the stories are symptoms of deeper issues, consciousness, and subconsciousness. Insecurities result in codependency, in my experience.
Insecurities result in codependency. Okay. I mean, I think you're right. The stories are from deeper things. I mean, especially the ones we're not aware of. And I think that's in some ways what we're touching on now is those stories that we don't even necessarily think of, but it's this underlying, you know, page 12 of the instructions, and it's there, you know. That's how it is, to me.
Yeah, and this conversation is tricky because stories aren't all bad. You know, they're not all bad, but we have them, and I think that the seeming bad, if any, is when we cut off the ability to be able to explore if there's anything else or any other possibility, right?
Mm-hmm. I think of a good story. Story that we're winners. So we went on a cruise once, and we decided we were winners. So we went on the cruise, and every time we turned around, we won something. And we got free parasailing, and we got some spa services, and we got money from the bingo. And you know, we walked away from the cruise with more money in our pocket than we got on it with. So
yeah, so it's the power of, and that goes to the power of your story, right? So it can take you anywhere.
It can take you out. It could take you somewhere.
Yeah,
you know, that you want to go, and I don't think that, but that's that story that, hey, I'm good. I know everything's fine, and I know that what I need is coming to me, so I'm not worried about it. You know, and
well, yeah, and it borders on an affirmation, right?
Yeah.
As well, you know. So if your positive story, or your negative story, if you're repeating it and you're affirming it, then that's what's going to continue to show up, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the Vegas story is a great story. Well, it's like when I go to Vegas. You know, I love Las Vegas. I love to gamble. And people are like, oh, yeah, you're going to Las Wages, right? I'm like, no. No, I'm going to pick up my money, you know, because that's my experience and that's what I go to do. I don't go to gamble to see if I'm going to win. I go to win, you know, which, you know, I'm sure there's like this slight line of people going, yeah, but that's different. You're affirming and you're visualizing and you're maybe, but it's still my story, you know?
Well, it's your story in general. It's not like you decided one time that's what you were going to try and see what happened.
Right.
That's just how you approach it. It's just like you go there to have fun and bring back money.
Right.
Right.
I do.
Pretty much. That's it.
Pretty much.
That's just.
Unless I don't. And then if I don't, like there's been times when I go to Vegas and I don't gamble. And my people that like to gamble with me are like, what do you mean? What do you mean you didn't gamble? I'm like, yeah, no, wasn't a gambling time. It was, we went to shows or we did this or we did that. You know, I
Right.
mean, so it is a balance of knowing what, you know, what to do when and how.
Well, and that's true of all of this stuff, you know, and anything that we bring into a relationship, any belief we have about ourselves or about other people is going to have an effect. And part of our whole growth journey, I believe, is about identifying those things and healing if there's anything under it that needs to be healed, and releasing what we don't need and gravitating to what is supportive. You know, I mean, there are, and I think sometimes, you know, having the grace to stop and go, okay, this isn't working. I'm realizing this is what I'm thinking. I'm realizing for whatever reason, I really need you to pay attention to me, and I'm doing all these things to get your attention. My story is you don't pay attention to me, you know,
Right.
whatever that is, something like that.
So I guess the thing is to finding balance in your stories and just being aware. I mean, listening to them. I mean, because there is the, you know, the extreme that Shay brought up, and, you know, and then, you know, as we said, not all stories are bad. And, you know, being aware of when and where and how you use them. And is there another possibility, especially in relationships? Because, you know, I don't know about you, but my experience of relationships is, you know, it's you're constantly adjusting on some level, you know, or constantly being willing to adjust or open to a new possibility. And
Well, if the story is that the relationship is new every day and there's new adventures to be had, that's a different story than, here we go again, you know, same day, same day, different, same shit, different day. That's it. That's, you know, that's a different story. And either one of those creates a different feeling around a relationship.
right.
Or around anything for that matter. I mean, your relationship to you.
Right. So then the challenge is to make it a new day.
Yeah.
And don't beat yourself up about your stories. They're okay. They're all right. They've served you. They've gotten you to this moment.
That's right.
And, you know, they've given you strength and courage and faith and all of those things. And so it's not about, you know, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's really about just being able to witness, I think, and from a different perspective, you know, what the story was about, how you can use it now, how it can transform and mute into something that you use now. And on that note, I'd like to say happy birthday to Jimmy Carter, 100 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Right? And I think that I'm sure in his lifetime he's had to shift some stories around.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, Shay, I hear you that there's history and there's story, but I would also say that history tends to create in us the opportunity to create a story around it. And so it becomes less about the history and more about whatever our perspective is and whatever we thought about it, whatever we, you know, whatever we think that meant. And so then that begins to run us if we let that happen. Yeah, there's, you know, A happened, B happened, C happened. That's history. But when we say A happened because of this and that was why, and then this happened, and I'm sure that they wanted me to, and then, you know, then that's the story, right? Yeah. All right. Exactly. Whew. Boy, good. That was going out there on a limb.
And story, I just have to say, story is such a triggering word
Right.
in New Thought because it just is.
Yeah.
You know, it's a triggering word, and generally, you know, it's
kind of used as a negative.
yeah, because you're
Yeah.
kind of digging up old stuff,
Right.
you know, and so, you know, when I teach writing to people, I say your story matters, and that's what we're living into, is that your story matters. And so whatever
The story you're creating.
the story you're creating,
Yeah.
so whatever the story you're, you know, whatever we're consciously creating, but it's just being able to embrace the past and, you know, and create from a new perspective and rock the love.
Rock the love wherever you are, folks. It's just about love. That's the thing. There's only love. That's all there is. And, you know, we get stuck on love not looking the way we wanted it to. But it's still all love, because
And we
know
get
that's
stuck
what the
on
source-
understanding that even though it's painful or there's unrest or there's violence, that at the bottom for that, there's a cry for love. It's confusing. Thank God we have each other.
That's right.
That's right.
That's why we rock the love with you, because it's fun and because we get to talk about these things. And that helps us learn.
Yep. So keep on rocking the love, everybody. And we will see you next week right here on New Thought Media Network. Bye.
Bye.